Uh, Hi everyone. Welcome to Launchpad, an initiative by Newton School where you learn about technologies which are industry ready for free. And this is the course on React. So it's an introduction to React course with some projects. So in the past lecture, we learned about React, React component, state, props, we also learned about component lifecycle, and we briefly looked into functional components and how we can use hooks to make functional component much more intelligent or make them like behave like class component, but without declaring class and all writing all those boilerplate codes. And we also made up a game, tic-tac-toe game, using class component. We learned some things about like how to style and how to manage and handle API calls in the last few couple of lectures. Okay, so in this lecture we're going to learn we're going to build a app to do app. Okay, so the last time we built an app which is tic tac toe, we use class component. So today we are going to build it using a functional component so that you guys can get the idea how to use functional component in in that general scenario that how to use them basically. Okay, so in our to do app, we will always going to have an input field which will define what the task we have to do. There will be a button to add that task into our to-do list, and then there would be a to-do list where we are going to have the task that we have defined, and then we also want a way to like just delete that task when it is completed. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. So let's just start uh, with our first component, which is app component. Basically, so we are making use of functional components. So that's why we are using function. Otherwise, we would have used class. Okay. So basically, what we want in this function to be done is in this component, we only want the UI to be rendered. Yeah. That is like the basic boilerplate. As we, if you remember in our like tic-tac-toe code, we only rendered board in there, and then board handled certain things that were needed and that were inside the board. So in that same way, it would just be app component would just render our to-do board, we can say, and then to-do board would have a couple of components which are required in the to-do app. Okay, so we're going to just return a div, and then inside that div would be to board. That would be this. We're just returning a div, and now we're going to add some styles to it. So we're just going to import style from dot slash app module. Okay. And we are going to just put a style over here, the dot uh, dot to do. We're going to make it a to do app. So we're going to define a class name called to do. And in that to do class name, what I want is I want margin left to be 80 pixels so that we can just get it into the center, and margin right to be basically, okay, margin top to be, let's say 50 pixels. Okay, just to make sure that our component is not on the side left side of the screen, it is in the right somewhere in the middle. Okay, and just use that class name. We'll just make this style dot studio. Okay, we have this. Now we will create a component called to do board. So just making to do board dot js. This is also going to be a functional component. So we're going to define our first import React, obviously, so that we can use the React things, and then make a function to do board And since it's not taking any props, we can omit the prop variable because we are not passing any props to it. Okay. So now in a to-do board, what we are going to have an input field and a button which is going to add task. Okay. Now, one thing is that. Now, other thing is we're going to have a list. Okay. So, what we're going to do is we're going to make two components. Since we can divide this into two components, we're going to pick, one is the way to add the list, add inside the to-do list, and one is the component which will show whatever item is inside the list. Yeah. So, what we're going to do is we're going to make add to do, and another component would be to just basically show, or just a better would be to do tasks. Okay. Now, since they are not defined, we have to first define them so that we can actually see what is happening there. So basically, we're just going to define a component here. New file addtodo.jsx. Okay. So importing React, basically same stuff as we did previously. Now we have a function in which we want to name it addTodo. Okay. Now what addTodo needs to do? AddTodo needs to show two things. One is an input button, input field, and other is a button. Yeah. Now, so what we're going to do is we're going to return an input. Type is text, since we want text to be entered, and that's it. And we can have a placeholder there. Placeholder, enter to do task. Okay. Now this is a placeholder. We're going to combine this is inside a div. Okay. Now we also want a button, so we're gonna have a button, and that's it. Okay. Now, when we rent, we have to export it also so that we can use it in other component. So we just export it. So this is basically what a add to do structure would look like. Okay. We have to add multiple things here. So we're going to add it in one step at a time. Now we have to import add to do here. Okay. Import add to do. Okay. So we have import. What it means is a parent element, because we have multiple child, so we need to always define a parent element there. Okay. Now we also want to show what the tasks are. So basically, we're just going to make a simple file here, and which will be our to do task dot so in that same thing, we're going to do that. Yeah. Function video task. Okay. Now what we want to do is it needs to show the whatever the task is, and it also needs to show either we have to define some way so that user can delete that task. Okay. So for this we can either use a button or just on click on the task. So whenever we click on the task, that task would get deleted. Okay. So for this we can do both of things. Okay. So let's just first do the on click. Okay. So we need a div, and then we would need a p. Okay, let's just make it a p, and just my first task. Okay, we're just going to have this task defined here, and we want it to be deleted on click. So we're going to have to add some functionality to that to do that. Okay, so let's just first see, does our component render perfectly or not? We have to export it. Now we're going to import it here. Import schedule task from dot slash schedule task. Okay. So we have to also export this one so that we can use it in the what we say in the app component, because we have to render this inside the app component. So what we're going to do is just import it here. Import Todo Board from. Okay. So this is our basic structure. Let's see what is. Okay, so we can see we have add enter to do task. Then we can see the my first two tasks. Now, why this button is coming up this way? Because we have not added any text to the button. So we're just going to add it. Add task. So we have this basic simple UI. Okay. Now, first of all, what we want this thing to do is just allow us to at least add that task. So what will happen is whenever we do this, type any character inside this, we're going to fire an event called onChange event on the input box. Okay, and when that event is fired, we get the value. Okay, so basically, if we go into this and we can, if we just take the onChange event and just console it for now, so that we can see what we get. Okay. Okay. So this is saved now. Let's just refresh it and look into the console. Okay. So whenever we're looking into the console, we are going to get, whenever we type in that, we're going to get so many things. Basically, in this thing, one thing is our value. So where the value be native element. Topic dot value this. There has to be a value thing. So basically, this value gives us whatever the value we want to like have. Okay. That is basically how this on change event works. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this value and use this thing inside the state. Okay. So how we're going to do that is we're going to go here. Now inside this addTodo thing, what we want is have a state. Okay. Now what that state needs to be, the task. Okay. So what we want to store is the task we want to store. So we want to name it task and set task. And initially what should have, it should have empty value, because initially since we did not type anything, so we need to have only that task to be like initially nothing to be that. Okay. So this is basically we're defining a state here. Okay. Now so that whenever we change the value needs to be shown also in the input box. So what we need to do is give it a value thing and make this value equals to be task, so that it whenever the user changes the value, we can see that value. Okay. Now we have to now save the value also. So what we're going to do is we're going to call a function called handle input change. Okay. And we're going to make a function here. Okay. So handle input change, and that is going to take the event that is going to pass event. Okay. Now this event has the value as I told you, like this event uh, must have the value. Okay. So event dot target. So let's just see if it has the if it gets the value or not. Okay. So target dot value. Okay. And this is having a spelling mistake. Okay. So whenever on change happens, this log will come. Okay. So let's just save it, and console that, refreshing it, and let's just type in something. Now what is happening is here it is not showing why it's not showing, because we have assigned this as a value. Now what the value is task. Currently task is empty, and we have not set this state anytime ever again. Okay. So we have to set it so that we can see inside that. But if we see at the log, we can see that this is coming. Okay. So every on change event is firing a console log. Okay. So just instead of firing a console log, what we're going to do, we're going to set our task. Set task to be okay. So set task would be event dot target dot value. Okay. Now if we refresh this thing and try to type it, you can see this value is coming here now because this is stored in the state, and so it is also showing in the value. Okay. So we can see that this is how we're going to handle our input change. So whenever we what we done, whenever the change happens, we call a function called handle input change. That handle input change set our state to whatever the value that is coming to us. Okay. Now how we are showing that state, that value, using the value prop in the input. Okay. So this is how our this thing going to work. Just to make it a bit good looking, let's just make it a style, just to style it a bit. So dot add task input. What we're going to do, we are going to just give it height of, let's say, 40 pixels and a margin right of 10 pixels, say, and also give it a width of, say, 100 pixels, or maybe just give it 200, and just use this thing. Input style from and what we're going to do here is class name is going to be style dot what we given a name. Okay, so let's just save it and see. Okay, we can see it just changing style and some things. Okay, now what we want to do is also is we want on the button click, this task needs to be saved somewhere. Yeah. Now where it should be saved. So basically you would think that we should save in this component only using state. but that does not this thing does not need it after that. Like whenever the add task happens, this thing does not need that thing anymore. Okay, but which component needs it? The to do task component needs it, and we cannot directly pass prop to do task because we are not rendering it here. Okay, so what we have to do is somehow give it to the parent of the to do task, which is to do board, and then to do board will pass this to do task. Okay, so basically what we are going to do inside this to do board, we are going to make a state which is called tasks. So we're just going to call it tasks, um, and this is going to be array. Why it needs to be an array? Because if it is not the array, we cannot store multiple of those. So we need to store multiple tasks, each having a text. Okay, so we need to define it as an array, and we need to store it. Now, uh, so to store it, we need to somehow set this task state to have more element uh, we need to set this task state to push into this array. Okay, that's what we have to do. So we need at least some kind of function, because we need to pass it to as a prop to add to do, because on button click it should somehow do this in the parent, and add to do cannot do anything in the parent until parent gives something as a prop that can do that. Okay, so it is basically like uh, you cannot touch anything above you, because that thing is not suppose if it's a tree branch, okay, and that is higher than your height, you cannot touch it. It's the same way until unless there is something, some rope or something there, then you cannot touch it. So that's what it is. Whenever when we pass this prop, it can act as a rope for the child to touch it and to pass to do something from it. So what we are going to make, we're going to do is add task function, which will receive the task what we want to add. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take the const current tasks is equal to task dot slice. So what we are doing here, we are just making a copy of it, and then what we're going to do is current task dot push. So we are just adding into the array the task, and then we are going to set the state, set task current task. Okay. Now what this does is takes the copy of the array, add the new task into this array, and then set this task as the new state, new task array. Okay, so that's this is what basically we are doing here. Okay, now what we have to do is we also have to pass this as a prop, so that it could actually use it, the child could actually use it. Okay, so basically just going to do this. And now, since we have passed this function as a prop to the child can use it. Okay. So basically what we are having is add to do task. So here we can have this. So what we have to do is now we have to make a function that on button click handles everything that we need to do to make our task added to the task code. Okay. So let's just do this. We're going to on click handle add task. Okay, now we're going to make that function const handle add task. Now what it needs to do, it needs to take whatever the prop that we were passing, the add task prop that is passing, call that so that it can set in the parent. And after that, since we have added our task, we also want this thing to be clear. We do not want it to be there after we added it. Yeah. So what we're going to do is basically just add, just call the prop. So we have to simply use a prop here, props. So props dot add to do. Or maybe it is add task. It was add task. Okay. Now what we have to pass? We have to pass a task which we want to save. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this state one and just going to pass this. Okay. So this will add in a parent component. Okay. Now once this is added in a parent component, what we want to do is also set our current state to be empty so that input field does not get anything. So input field just have nothing. Okay. It just shows the placeholder value. So this is our handle add task, and what we have did is we just set it into the parent, so parent can store it, and now our current state is going to be what we can say is empty. Okay, so let's just save it and let's see this in action. Okay, so let's say I need to buy groceries. Okay, that's not a function. Task is not a function. Yeah, function. Just a second. Okay, we have this thing wrong. Now we, if we do this, it should. Flight is not a function. Okay, that. Okay, this is task. So basically, we have did some like mistakes in variable names. That's why we're getting those errors. Just going to do that. So as you can see, when you click add task, it basically just set this thing inside the state of the parent component and removes it. So just to check, we in last yesterday's we lecture we learned about dev tools. Okay, so we have to check that did it set correctly in the parent state or not. Okay, so in the to do task board, let's just make another one. You can see when I click add task, what will it do? It just add one more. Like need to go to coffee house. Okay. So whenever we just do this, it's just going to add this, and we can see. Okay. So it is not doing it perfectly fine. Basically, what it is doing is every time it is replacing that. Yeah. So instead of just making copy, just make it inside the task only, or just take a copy this way. Current task is task and then push task. So let's just say hi. We have added hi here. So just refresh it first. Just hi. It's not setting state perfectly. We have to look into that. Tasks. We have tasks here. So since we are not able to set this, we have to look why we are not able to set. So just we can do it. Current task. So just save it, and you're going to look into the console what is happening here. Okay. It's having an array high, and then it is having this also. It's not just working fine, but this is not showing perfectly. Add to do has a stateful. Okay, not is saying it must be the React dev tools were not reacting properly. So let's just do it one more time. Hello, and then add it. Yes, React dev tools are not perfect. So yeah, hello will get rendered. Yeah. So this is how we can see that state is getting updated perfectly fine. Okay. So now just to make it a bit more good looking, let's just add a class name style dot just make it button add button. We need to make it height, let's say 40 pixels only and nothing else. We just want that. Okay. And style dot add. So it just makes it the height to be like 40 pixels. Okay. So it just becomes equal to the text box. Now, what we want to do is now we have this component perfectly done. Now, whatever this component need to do, it is doing it. What we wanted it to do, we only wanted it like to have an input which allows you to add tasks. So basically, whatever input you are giving, it should save it, and when you click add task, it should save it into the parent component state. Okay. Now, what we want is uh, this component to show whatever is inside the state to on the browser. Okay, that's what we want to do. So we will go into to do task. Now, how can it do that? It can do that if parent component passes this prop. Okay, because this prop is what contains this state variable is what contains all the tasks. Okay, so what we have to do is uh, task is equals to okay. So now this component to do task can have a variable called tasks. Okay, now it can access that. Yeah. So what we have to do is we have to iterate over that. Okay. So props, we have to use props here. Props dot task dot map. Now why we are using map? Because it is an array, so we can use map. Now what we want to do is we want to actually render that task. Okay, so we will do this way. So if you just make it as a p for now. Now one more thing you should remember is whenever you're rendering more than one component, like in a loop. So like whenever you're rendering in a loop or a list, something called kind of a list. If you're rendering, you should pass a prop to the component as something called as key. And what this key allows us to do is allows React to know that if like whenever your list or changes, so if it have an addition or if it has a deletion, React knows which element to remove instead of re-rendering the whole. So it's a good idea to always include it. So what we're going to do is for now we are going to just use index. But if you will go into React website, they will say you should not use index as a like key. Basically you should use something that is more unique and that is not going to change much. Okay, but for our scenario we can use index and that will work pretty fine for us. Okay, and if the remove key, there's also no problem, but just since it's a good practice and you should always follow it because it makes a bit like when your list is big and you're doing many things in the list, it just makes some performance benefit. So it's just as a good idea to do that. Okay, so let's just save it and let's see what happens. You can see this is what we have as a previously when we were adding tasks. So in this nothing changed, so it will not render that re-render that. So our tasks are not gone. What we have changed is in add to do. Sorry, in to do task we have added a way to just see those tasks. Okay. Now, so just to look at it and that it works or not, we are going to add a task. Go to market. Okay. It's not refreshing it properly. Let's just go here. Go to market. That's not refreshing. We are setting current task here. This current task needs to be faster. Why will I change the box? So just to look at that, what we have to do is we're getting the task prop here, but we are not having a re-render. That's what we're having. We're not this thing is not re-rendering. So we have to look why it is not re-rendered. Okay. So to do that, let's just log here in props.task. Just go to the console. Todo Board JSX. Okay. Oh. Task is there. Task. Why is So basically, what is happening is we are when we want like these things to render automatically. So whenever we are changing the props, it should change the props, and that's what we are doing here when we are saying doing this thing. Okay, so just do this. I don't think so that will do any difference, but let's just do it. Okay, so on refresh, it is showing it's not showing it directly. So props.class, and then what we have did is we have applied a check. This is an array. This is also an array. We're pushing the array. A friend. Okay. Two tasks is getting undefined. So what is happening is this to do task is not okay. This is needs to be task basically instead of task. And this props are not changing. No, props are changing basically. It's not rendering. The props are not changing. Okay. Let's just So what we are trying to look is a way to like why since we are passing this as a prop, okay, and what should happen actually is the use state should like whenever the set state this set is happening, it should re-render the component that we have, and for some reason it is not re-rendering this component, so we have to look into that. By the meantime, just we're going to do one thing here for that before that. so that we can have our actual project completed. So what we are basically need to do is, now whenever we click on this task, we want it to be removed. Okay, so let's just make this and add task. And what we want to do is we want this to be removed. Okay, whenever we click on it. So what we have to do is, from the to do board, we have to make a function called const remove task. Okay. Now, what we can do is we can basically use an index to remove the task. Okay, so or we can just use text also. So let's just do with the index and then just remove that task. Okay, how we can do that is something called as we can just slice that in the from the array. So basically, whatever the index is, we can just remove that from the array. Or if we are using text, we have to filter it out, whichever the text is. So what we can do is const current task is equals to we have our tasks and current task dot filter. Now we are using filter function here because we want to check which value is matching with our current value. Okay, so task and that is going to be task double equals to is not equals to text that we are passing. Okay, so if it's not the text, we are going to just make that true, and otherwise it is false. Okay, so we are going to make remove new task, and then we are going to set tasks to be new tasks. Okay, that's what we're going to do. And now we have to pass this function to the children so that it can remove that. Okay, so this remove task would be this way, and this what we can do is start remove task. Okay, and then we can just call this with whatever the task we are having. Okay, so that is going to give you like which that is going to like on click it's going to remove the task that we are having. So if we click on this, it should remove that. Yeah, it is removing that. Now the only trouble we are having is when we are doing the add task, it is not just adding that task. Okay, so let's just try one thing here. So what we can do is using this strategy, what we call as destruction strategy. You can just take the current task and also this task and directly set the state, and let's see if it works or not. And yeah, now it's working. So we can say go to market, AddTask, pick up children from school. Okay, so in this way we can add it. Now, whenever we click on the task, let's suppose you have done this task, you have gone to the market, so you want to delete it. So you click on this, and when you click on this, it just gets removed. Okay, so this is how basically it is done. So what we have did is we are just in the to do task one. What we did is we just make a P which renders our which shows our text and just it shows our text, and we have a key prop passed to it, so that we can just make it like a bit say just like in a React way. So since it's a list, we want it to be having a key. So always we have to put a key there. Um, and when a user clicks on it, we call a function called remove task. What this function does is calls the prop parent function, which is remove task, and which takes a new task and run a filter function. So if you don't know about filter, what it does is it takes a callback function in which you will write a condition. Now condition is to be either true or false. Now if it is true, then that task, that element is returned. If it is false, that element is not returned. So when you get a new your new array, your task, whichever you want it to filter, gets removed, and then you set your task to be the new task. Okay, so that's how we can remove our like an element from the array. Okay, and basically this is it. This is basically it for a to-do app. This simple to-do app that we can have. Now you can basically have multiple things, like you can have an edit, or you can have, so if you want it to be edit, you can make a button edit here, and that will make this thing to go here. So you can do it as an assignment. It will be a fun task to do as an assignment, to like have a button which says for each task edit, and then whenever user clicks on edit, what you want to do is this thing to be filled with the whatever the task is, and then when you click on add task, you instead of adding the task, it just edited that task. Okay, so that could be a challenge, fun and challenging thing to do. So this is basically it in this lecture. So we've learned how to use function component with this to make a React application, simple React application. So yep. Thank you guys for your time. And this was our last lecture in this series to Introduction to React. I hope you enjoyed the course and learned at least basics of React. If you want to learn more about React, you can like look at Launchpad, and you'll find some courses that goes more advanced in React. Okay. So thank you for your time.